What makes a fixed blade broadhead fly good or bad? There's no doubt that for most of us out there, you can have 10 broadheads on a table and go shoot them all, and some are going to fly better than others. So why does that happen? What is it in the design of each broadhead that makes them fly the way they do? And what are the key features that make a broadhead fly as much like a field point as possible? So the first thing and the biggest thing is weight distribution. The reason that a field point flies so good is because 100% of the weight is centered. 100% of the weight of that field point is in line with the arrow shaft. Now, when we look at a broadhead, we call the part of the broadhead that sits in line with the arrow shaft, we call that the ferrule. So when we know that the reason a field point flies so well is because of the weight distribution being centered, we want to shoot a broadhead that has the best weight centeredness as possible. Now, you see a lot of fixed blade broadheads out there that try to have the biggest blades possible, and what generally happens with broadheads like that is you get an aluminum ferrule because it's light, and then all the weight goes into the steel blades, which is taking weight away from the center of the arrow, taking weight away from the ferrule. You do not want to be shooting a fixed blade broadhead, or any broadhead for that matter, with an aluminum ferrule. Aluminum bends, aluminum breaks, it's very light. You're completely ruining the weight centeredness of that head, and those broadheads are not going to fly as well. When you look at our broadheads, the tooth of the arrow, we designed a broadhead to be as much like a field point as we could, and it's basically a field point with blades. Our heaviest broadheads have over 90% of the weight centered in the ferrule, making it the most field point like fixed blade broadhead on the market. That's not just some fancy marketing claim, it's a fact that we have the most weight centered fixed blade broadhead on the market, and that is why they fly so good. The second thing that's going to impact how a broadhead flies is the construction. So a broadhead can be made of one or more pieces. When you have a one-piece broadhead milled out of a solid bar of steel like ours, or injection molded like some other popular companies, that is going to be stronger than broadheads that are made of multiple components and held together by a screw, or a lot of broadheads that are held together by simply the pressure of the shaft as you screw the broadhead onto the arrow shaft. More components that are being held together means there's more points of failure. It's as simple as that. And after shooting these multi-component broadheads a number of times into targets, you're going to notice often that the blades will start to be loose, that the structural integrity of the broadhead is breaking down, and that just can't happen with a one-piece broadhead. So the construction of the broadhead might not make a difference on your first shot, but over time, it is going to make a difference if you shoot your broadheads at targets a lot, or if you plan on reusing broadheads hunt after hunt. And the third thing that is going to be a huge factor in how good a fixed blade broadhead flies is just the general quality of the broadhead. Having a broadhead that is perfectly squared is so crucial. You could have the most perfect bow setup in the world, the most well-tuned arrow, perfect spine matching, and if your broadhead is not square, when you put it on the end of that arrow, and you can check this with an arrow spinner, if your arrow and broadhead are not spinning square, they are not going to fly. It's as simple as that. So choosing quality components, American made, is a big thing. There's a huge difference in quality between products made in North America versus made overseas in China. You need to be shooting quality components. And this also comes down to just general quality control, the weight variances of different broadheads, the steel quality, but the biggest thing is how square that broadhead is when you're rolling it on a spinner. You need to be seeing a perfect spin, or they're just not going to fly. So the key takeaway from this that I want you to get out of this video when you're choosing your broadheads for the year is, first and foremost, look at the weight distribution. Try to pick one that looks as much like a field point as possible in the center, meaning that the weight distribution is as centered as it can be, and then go from there.